Hey, you kids, get off my lawn. Unless you're mowing it, let's see your mobile phone for initiative. Do as I say. What's up, a frowny face? Go out and play. Just like your parents did. Just like your parents did. As if your parents did.
Hello and welcome to First Gen Gamers. I am co-host number 1, Jed, and co-host number 2, Ashley.
Hi.
Hello. Have you gotten over your grudge against me from the last episode?
No, never will.
I live to disappoint.
That's what she said.
Da-dunch. Oh, starting off hot. Today, we are discussing what?
The best of Nintendo.
Yes, we are celebrating the mighty N, the longest, most successful console manufacturer in the industry. And in honor of the fact that they're going to be, by the time this episode posts, will be within a few days of the Switch 2's big official reveal trailer. God, I hope it's better than the first reveal trailer, which was so damn dumb.
Yes, let's dick ride Nintendo for an hour.
Hey, they have done some good things. Don't worry. Scheduled for later in the year, I won't say when, but there is a sneak preview. We will do the opposite for Nintendo and spend an hour or so beating them into their ground for their bullshit.
No, it's okay. I like Nintendo. I'm just not like a diehard Nintendo person. So I'm just teasing, guys. I like Nintendo. Don't worry.
You know, they're like every video game company. Well, okay, not everyone. Looking at you, Activision and Konami and EA, but Nintendo has their positives and negatives. And I would be remiss if I didn't say that they didn't have negatives.
I think everybody does.
Right. It's impossible to be a 100% pristine, multi-billion-dollar international conglomerate.
Exactly.
But today we are going to celebrate their positive things. We're going to be nice for a change. So, with that, let's get started. We're starting off with the second generation. What do you got?
I kind of meshed second and third gen in, and I called it the early years before Mario had his plumber's license. Because technically Nintendo didn't really go all in on consoles until the third gen, but I feel like we have to acknowledge the weird Wild West of early gaming. So the Atari 2600 and television, ColecoVision, blah, blah, blah. And I feel like these were all great and paved the way for gaming as a whole. But in terms of Nintendo, this was their arcade era. So you have Donkey Kong, 1981, I believe. And that was the real kind of first taste of Nintendo's genius. So you play, at this point, you're just playing as a plumber who they call Jumpman. And he's trying to rescue a woman from a giant ape. And then obviously this would later become Mario, the mustached Italian we all know and love. Do you want me to pause before I talk about the third gen? I kind of mushed them in together.
Yeah, sure. So that would be my thing for the second generation as well. It really was, like you said, the arcade generation. Donkey Kong, absolute legend of an arcade game. I mean,
yeah,
we talked about it a couple episodes before. I mentioned the film A King of Kong, Fistful of Quarters. There's a whole goddamn documentary about men trying to become the high score world record holder of Donkey Kong. There are only so many games that reach that level of iconic status. And this is where Mario came from. I do have to throw out a little bit of extra for this generation. Donkey Kong Jr., the only game where Mario's the villain. Just a fun little factoid. Probably heretical statement. I prefer Donkey Kong Jr. to Donkey Kong, but that's just me. But yeah, that's second generation is them kind of finding their wheels and breaking into the arcade business with some early titles like the Donkey Kongs, like Mario Brothers, and that would set the stage for the third generation. So
yes. the NES, Nintendo Entertainment System. And I feel like this was kind of like boom. I feel like Nintendo didn't just enter the home console market. I feel like they kind of saved it. You have the video game crash of 1983, which nearly wiped out the entire industry. And then Nintendo, the NES system came in like an Italian dad being open a door at Thanksgiving. And you had some really good games that came out. You had Super Mario Bros. For the NES, which I feel like was kind of a blueprint for platforming games. I feel like this was kind of the reason why side-scrollers became such a big thing. And it's the start of a franchise that is still making a lot of money today. You also had The Legend of Zelda for NES. And I feel like if you were a kid in the 80s, this was your game. This was your open world RPG before open world RPGs were a thing. And then you had Metroid, which also came out in 86, which was a super atmospheric but non-linear adventure with one of, in my opinion, the best plot twists in gaming history. So they really kind of broke into the market and just like, I don't know. They took everything down and made themselves like a real name for themselves.
Yeah, that's a great summation of it. I want to touch on the business aspect of how they saved the industry as well, because I think that for a lot of younger gamers, they might overlook not only Nintendo's importance in saving the industry, but the canny ways in which they did it. Coming out of the video game crash, a lot of that was predicated on crappy business practices. Atari didn't have a licensing program. It was just, can you get a hold of a dev unit for the Atari 2600? Great. Let's make a game. You had games being made by by backyard programmers. You had games being made by fucking dog food companies. You had games, the infamous porn games. You had no quality standards, no quality control. It was a Wild West, and that's what helped lead to the crash. So Nintendo comes in and they go, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're not going to market this as a video game system. We're going to market it as an entertainment system. We're going to package it with a robot so it looks like a toy. We're going to take the stigma of video games out of the video game and mask it in a way that will be more appealing for parents, will be appealing to the kids. We're going to put a bright yellow sunburst sticker on the video game box that says seal of approval. So the parents can look at it and go, oh, Nintendo actually reviewed this. They actually paid attention to its quality. We know they didn't, but that's another story. But it gave the parents confidence that Nintendo was monitoring what was going on to their console. And you're right. It helped rejuvenate the industry entirely. It helped bring it back from certain death, and it turned it into a must-have item and launched so many different genres, like you said. Side-scrolling with Mario, Metroidvania with Metroid, open-world adventure and just straight adventure with Zelda. Dragon Warrior helped launch RPGs in the form that we know them today. So much. So many video game franchises that are still around, even from third parties, got their start on Nintendo. Castlevania and Mega Man, again, Dragon Warrior, Final Fantasy. All of these games, all these franchises, if it wasn't for the success of Nintendo and them turning everything they touched into gold, we wouldn't be where we are right now, probably.
I agree.
All right. So with that, let's get to the next level, the fourth generation of consoles.
So, sorry, go ahead.
Well, not necessarily the fourth generation of consoles. We're really talking about the Super Nintendo and the Game Boy. So,
yeah. So I kind of meshed in the fourth and fifth gen together because I feel like this is kind of the golden age and peak Nintendo. If you grew up in the 90s, specifically, this was the era. You had the SNES and the Genesis war, which was brutal, but I feel like Nintendo had the better exclusives. Sega had blast processing, but Nintendo had bangers. And I feel like the best of this era, you had Super Mario World, which in my opinion, was the best 2D platformer ever made. Yoshi, Secret Exits. You had a Legend of Zelda Link to the Past that came out in 91, which was the definitive Zelda experience until Ocarina of Time came out. And you had Donkey Kong Country, which was a game that made people question whether or not SNES secretly had a graphics upgrade while anybody was looking. So I feel like this was kind of like the golden era for 4th gen, and I'll pause until 5th gen.
There's a lot to touch on with this generation, and everything you said was absolutely correct. One thing I think that needs to be mentioned is Nintendo was the first console manufacturer to survive a console transition. So you look at the first generation, which we never talk about because it's all Pong variants, but Magnavox had the Odyssey in the first generation. They were the dominant brand. The Odyssey 2 was part of the second gen, and no one noticed it because it was the Atari 2600 that took over, and it blew the doors out of the place. What happened to Atari in the third generation? Distant third behind Sega. Nintendo ruled. So what happens in the fourth generation? Okay, yeah, it's a slugfest, Nintendo versus Sega. Sales-wise, yes, Nintendo won in the end, but you could debate the reason for that. But sales-wise, Nintendo did win. But they came out on top again. They weathered the storm. They weathered competition from all sides. And they showed that there is a market for iterating on the consoles. You know, you can make a console in this generation, and there is a way to sell the next console generation and not make the parents feel like they've wasted their money for the past 6 years. And I think a large strength of that, you mentioned the library of the Super Nintendo. Not to shit on Sega, because I was a Sega fanboy back in the day, and Sega did come out swinging with a snotty punk rebel advertising campaign, and it was an effective campaign. It got me interested, but Super Nintendo's strength was going, yeah, that's cool. We got the next Mario. We got the next Zelda. We got the next Metroid. We got the next Castlevania. We got the next Mega Man. We got the next. That was their key, was that everything that the Nintendo that the NES had, they had the next version of that, and it was super. And it blew the doors off of what you had before.
Yeah.
So as cool as the Genesis was, and it was a great system, you couldn't play the next Final Fantasy game on there. You couldn't play the next Mario game on there. And I 100% agree with you on Mario World. Not only is it the best 2D Mario, it is in the running for me for best Mario of all time. Like, it is a neck and neck between it and Mario Galaxy. But the Super Nintendo was just, it kept everything that the NES did and just did it even better. And it showed, we don't have to change with the times because we're selling a unique experience that is timeless.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Moving on to the 5th gen then.
So I feel like the 5th gen was also peak Nintendo, at least for me. The N64 will forever be, along with the Dreamcast, which I know is a Nintendo, but two of my favorite systems of all time. But I feel like the N64 might have been a little bit messy, but it was legendary. I feel like it still to this day is an iconic gaming system. This was the first real attempt at 3D gaming, and I think some people think the controller kind of looked like a torture device. I love the N64 controller. I know a lot of people will disagree, but I love it. And the games were classics. You have Super Mario 64, which came out in 96. I feel like that goes without saying. It's the blueprint for 3D platforming. It was a really revolutionary game and a technical marvel. I still play this game to this day. And then you have The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, which I think came out in 98. People say this is the GOAT. Okay. It is a masterpiece. It's the game that, made you want to play the ocarina in real life, even if you didn't know how to play it. I will say I think Majora's Mask is better. I know that's not a popular thought, but I think Majora's Mask is better. But either way, you had several games that came out on this console that were truly like revolutionary, not just for Nintendo, but for the Legend of Zelda franchise as a whole.
So this generation was probably the toughest one for me to find positivity about.
Okay.
This is not to slander, because it's more that this generation, I find, and I'm not just speaking about Nintendo here for this brief moment, this entire generation, PlayStation, Nintendo, and Sega, I find is the hardest generation to go back to, because it is a transitional generation. The NES was a great generation. The Super Nintendo was refining that generation. This one was the first step into 3D, and there was a lot of awkward baby steps with a lot of games in that. So that, I think, makes this one a little bit difficult, because you can see games trying new things, like Ocarina of Time, for instance. I can't dispute its place as a legendary game. If you go back to try and play it, there's so much empty space in that game. Like, you get the horse and you're riding through the fields, and there's nothing to do in that field for a long time. You feel like it's just empty space. And the camera in Super Mario 64 can get wonky a little bit sometimes. It doesn't track 100% of the time. It's definitely an embryonic generation. That being said, Nintendo did the embryonic forms of these things better than anybody. Those 3D games, Super Mario 64 is the blueprint for 3D platformers. Period. Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time, and Majora's Mask, the blueprint for 3D Zelda. Something else that I will give the Nintendo 64 over any of the other consoles at that time is that was the multiplayer console. Even though the PlayStation sold more, it was a single player's haven. You played that game, you could play with Buddy, but if you wanted to play multiplayer, you wanted to get 3 friends over, you'd have like a 4-man game. Smash Brothers, Carmageddon, what's the game? Mario Party. That system was built to be the party game console, to have buddies over and to just have fun. GoldenEye, duh.
Yeah, GoldenEye.
I almost forgot that one. That console was built for that from the ground up, and no other console has been as good at that. Well, yeah. I shouldn't say not since, but every game console that has multiplayers as a focus, the N64 was the start of that.
Oh, for sure. Like 100%. That was really like the start of, I feel like, couch co-op.
Yeah. And I think it was a smart pivot on Nintendo's move too, because they knew that PlayStation was chasing a completely different audience. They were chasing the kids who were now teenagers that didn't want Mario, that were trying to be too cool for Mario. Sega was an afterthought. 3DO, ha 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 ha. Nintendo knew that they were selling an experience, and that they were going to appeal to Nintendo fans at that point. So it was a smart pivot on their part to go, look, we're doing something a little different, but it's something different you can't get anywhere else. And that multiplayer part was a big component of that.
Yeah, I agree. So for the 6th and 7th gen, I kind of called this the experimental era, where Nintendo gets kind of weird, but in a good way. So I feel like the GameCube, much like the Dreamcast, and I know that's not Nintendo, but I feel like both of those consoles were kind of ahead of their time a little bit and kind of underrated. I feel like GameCube also had a really weird controller. I loved it. But I feel like it also had some of the best exclusives ever. And then the Wii came along and obviously made anybody's grandmother a gamer. But to me, I feel like the GameCube was such a big part of my childhood. For example, one of my favorite games of all time. And I think it kind of shows like across generations. Like, I'm in my early 30s, but my younger siblings, my brother and sister, are in their early 20s. And I think something that's kind of iconic about the GameCube is that we were able to kind of bridge that gap in age and share those games together. So we all loved to play Super Mario Sunshine, which is still one of my favorite Nintendo games of all time, Luigi's Mansion. So I think they did a really good job of making games and content that you could play in your teens or at like 8 or 9. And I kind of really appreciated that aspect of it. And I think I probably got the most wear and tear out of my GameCube than any other console until like my most recent Xbox. So again, I loved Super Mario Sunshine. Luigi's Mansion was such an iconic game. You know, now you have Luigi's Mansion 2. You have Super Smash Brothers Melee that came out. I feel like that's the reason why so many controllers got thrown across the room. You have Metroid Prime for GameCube. First person Metroid, so I'm sure you probably hate it, but it was incredible. You have Legend of Zelda, Twilight Princess, which is like edgy Zelda. It's like the hot topic Zelda phase of the franchise. But I feel like so many really good games came out on the GameCube, and it was really a really big contender against the PS2 and the Xbox.
Yeah, I think Nintendo's strategy was interesting with this generation because they wanted to have feet in both countries. They wanted to appeal to the Nintendo fan and have those unique Nintendo experiences. But at the same time, they wanted to go, look, we can be grown up. We can give you those experiences that you can get. You might be able to get somewhere else, but you can get them in addition to Mario, Zelda, etc. So you had stuff like Resident Evil 4 on there, Metal Gear Solid, the Twin Snakes, the Rogue Squadron games. You had those experiences where they were trying to appeal to both. Sales-wise, it didn't quite work, but you go back and play those games, and so many of them still hold up. Mario Sunshine, for as quirky and off-kilter as it is,
so good.
Yeah, it's a fun game. I think it's really underrated. Controversial opinion, I like it more than Super Mario 64.
Same. That's like I know people don't love it, but that's one of my favorite Mario games of all time. I don't care what anybody says. And the graphics are beautiful. Like some of those levels you can go to, like there's this hotel that you can go to. It almost looks like Hawaii. It's beautiful. I love that game. Beautiful.
Yeah, I think the hate that it gets from people, it's rooted in the same issue that the hate for Super Mario Brothers 2 on the original Nintendo and Zelda 2 on the original Nintendo get, in that Nintendo took a risk. And there's a group of Nintendo fans who never want risks. They want the same game every single generation, just iterated over and over and over in infinity until
That's
the
boring.
end of fucking time. It's absolutely boring. It is why, another controversial opinion, I didn't care for Super Mario Wonder on the Switch.
I didn't like that either.
It felt like New Super Mario Brothers Part 5. Was it a well-made game? Yes. All Mario games are well-made. But it was so redundant. Whereas Super Mario Sunshine had something unique. You can point to that game and go, that one's different. You can point to Wind Waker and go, that one's different. Or Twilight Princess, different. You can point to Metroid Prime and go, oh, holy shit, they took a big swing taking Metroid and putting it in first person. Different. And yes, I like Metroid Prime. It's one of the few first-person games that I can deal with. I'm just angry that they didn't remaster all 3 of them for Switch. But it is an era of Nintendo where they took risks, and I think people just weren't ready for the risks. Retroactively, I think the GameCube gets a lot more love than it did in its time. Probably the most retroactively loved console of theirs.
Yeah.
And I appreciate them for that. I would rather see Nintendo take big swings than the play it safe Nintendo, which the Wii U. Something else I think in this generation that needs to be mentioned, which neither of us have touched on yet, is their handheld. I think that this generation, even though that's not a home console, I think it needs to be brought up because it eventually their handheld comes into play eventually with their consoles, but they had spent the better part of over a decade at this point, not just dominating it, but absolutely fucking shit up with the competitors. Sega tried and failed. TurboGrafx tried and failed. Atari tried and failed. During this generation, you had weird upstarts like Nokia with the N-Gage and what was that other dumb one? The Gizmondo. Everyone tried to come at the throne. Everybody missed. They went from Game Boy to Game Boy Color, and then this generation, they went Game Boy Advance, and just, if it was handheld, it was Nintendo. End of story. And every version of the main franchises had their portable counterparts, and a lot of those games are beloved just on the same level as the home ones. I often see Legend of Zelda Minish Cap put in the top 5 of Zelda games. Metroid Zero Mission and it's a Metroid Prime Hunters, but the Metroid side-scrolling game that came out on the Game Boy Advance held up in high regard. When the GameCube wasn't finding the footing that they wanted it to, the Game Boy Advance was. And like I said, in the future, that matters.
Yeah, I agree.
And that leads us to the 7th generation.
So yeah, that's when the Wii happened. And I feel like this was print money mode for Nintendo. I feel like everybody and their mom had a Wii. Wii Sports alone could have carried the entire console. You had people playing Wii bowling and accidentally eating their controllers into their televisions. Do you remember that? Like the pictures that came out with Wii Sports?
Oh yeah, like huge, like lovely flat screen TVs, and there's a Wiimote just stuck in there like a dagger.
Good times. I loved it.
Like, so yeah, you did see you saw the wrist strap, right?
Yeah, I don't know. People are insane. Yeah, Wii Sports I feel like was the party game, and the number of TVs destroyed by Wiimotes was astronomical. You had Super Mario Galaxy, which I think came out in 2007. So Mario in space, beautiful level design, absolute perfection. And then you had I forgot to mention like you said, all of the handhelds that came out. You had the DS, the 3DS, the extra large DS. What was that? Which one was that one called? The large
DS XL, if I remember correctly.
I had the 3DS and I loved that. And then for the Wii, you had that beautiful limited edition Mario game that came out that had all of the old Marios remastered for the Wii. What was it? The anniversary edition. You remember that?
Yeah.
It was super limited.
Yeah. Super Mario.
Yeah.
It was the compilation from Super Nintendo with some extras. I can't remember, but it was like Super Mario All-Stars 25th anniversary. Something.
Yeah. And this was my favorite era. I was working at GameStop and I would always make this really fucked up joke, not to be a dick, but it's really funny. So whenever somebody would buy Nintendogs and it was a parent, I'd ask them if they wanted the Michael Vick edition of Nintendogs for the DS.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, truly an iconic time for Nintendo and me as a very young GameStop manager.
I remember the first time I played Wii, I had a buddy who he got it on launch day, one of the lucky ones. And he comes over, him and his girlfriend, and he's like, we're bringing the Wii. We're going to give it a try. We played tennis and golf and baseball and bowling for 4 hours. I was so damn sore.
Oh, yeah, it was great.
Yeah, my right arm from shoulder to wrist was just pain. And my wife, too. We're both sitting there on the couch like, we're going to have to trade the ice pack back and forth. Or go to the store and get a shitload of frozen peas because we're in pain. And immediately it was, okay, now that we've played it, we love this. We need to get one. It was Wii Sports alone, like you said, could have carried that system. It was so popular and successful that people went out and would buy other games that did the same thing as Wii Sports. Like They would go out and buy.
Xbox did that after,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, I'm talking even on the Wii.
Oh, yeah.
Like people would go out and buy Brunswick sponsored pro bowling.
Yeah.
Because they're like, well, if Wii Sports Bowling was fun, let's have another bowling game.
And real quick, I forgot to mention a game that I love still to this day. And I will do this dance like at a party if I've had enough drinks, but Just Dance and like specifically the Rasputin dance. Like, are you kidding me? Iconic still to this day.
Yeah, that game was not that game. That system was so much fun for having people over and having a fun time. Rock Band. We still have a Rock Band set up. And we probably had bought an extra, I think by the time it was all said and done, I think we bought like 80 songs to go along with the base game.
I love it.
There was one New Year's where we had the same friends that came over and showed us the Wii. We had them plus another couple, so there were 6 of us. And our goal was to do the ultimate set list. The challenge where you play all of the songs in the base game. So I don't remember how many songs there are. There's like 100, I think, somewhere around there. But you have to play them all consecutively, nonstop. So we would rotate out. Okay, it's your turn to play guitar. Okay, it's my turn to play drums. It's your turn to sing. We would just keep rotating in and out so no one got tired. Everyone got a break. We didn't finish it. We went into the wee hours of the morning and too many people were nodding off. I think we finished we got about 4 songs away from the end, which are all the hardest ones.
Holy shit.
Yeah, it's like the last 4 songs are like Through the Fire and Flames by Dragon Force, Painkiller by Judas Priest.
They had that on Rock Band too? I know that was a Guitar Hero game.
I think so. I might be misremembering if that one's on there or not, but it was games or songs with just insanely fast guitars or insanely complicated drum riffs. And those were the last ones. It was too high of a mountain to climb, but that system.
Yeah.
Nintendo's strategy in that was just brilliant of going, PlayStation and Xbox are fighting over the same group of people. They're fighting over this niche of people who are called gamers, heavy air quotes. Why don't we focus on everybody else?
I want to tell a quick story about Through the Fire and Flames since you brought it up really, really fast. So this is how I got my job at GameStop. My stepdad knew the store manager. Hi, Los, if you're ever listening. But when I went in to talk to him, I told him I could beat Through the Fire and Flames on Expert. And he's like, okay, if you can beat it on Expert, you'll get the job. Which I'm pretty sure my stepdad was just like, this is my daughter. She's fucking awesome and she loves games. But I beat it on Expert and then I got the job. Anyway, that's my story.
I have a GameStop story that's related to this generation too. And it's not a positive, but I took it as a badge of pride anyway. It was just a reflective of kind of gamer mentality, but there was one time I went into a GameStop and I was looking for a Wii game. I can't remember what Wii game it was. I want to say I ended up with not Flink Smash, Block Blast, I think it was. It was a puzzle game where you like flung blocks at the screen using the controller. And it was like produced by Steven Spielberg of all people. And it was a fun game. It was nothing amazing, but it was a fun game. But I remember getting the box and taking it up to the counter, and the attendant they were having a discussion about 2 of them were having a discussion about some game on Xbox. I can't remember what, but it was a quote unquote hardcore game. And I get up there and I put the Wii game down, and they look at me with scorn. They're like, "Oh, you're getting a Wii game, huh?" Which was just like, why?
I don't know. People are weird.
And like, it's still a video game, man. Yes, just because it's like one of the top 3 selling consoles of all time, just because it was motion control, it's still a game. And there was a group of gamers that I don't think they appreciated that grandmas and wine aunts and just these random people were getting into gaming. I don't know why. You're expanding the audience. You're getting new people to come in. I think that was what was so fun about it, was getting your mother-in-law to come over and try Wii Golf.
Yeah, I agree for sure.
We're just about at modern times now, 8th generation, since they haven't entered the 9th generation yet. So what do you got for this one?
I obviously called this the modern era. Nintendo says we're back. So I feel like we don't talk about the Wii U a lot, understandably so. Let's just not talk about it, but the Switch, I feel like that's the comeback story. After getting absolutely dunked on by Sony and Microsoft for a couple of years, Nintendo roared back with I feel like it's almost like a hybrid console, obviously, that made handheld gaming great again. I hate that I said that, but I said it because here we are. We're in MAGA, so let's make consoles and handhelds great again, right? Okay. So the best of this era, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. I think that came out in 2017. It's open world Zelda done right. You could set things on fire. You could climb shit. It's magical. You have Super Mario Odyssey, which is great. Animal Crossings. I feel like Animal Crossing, at least for me and several other people I know, I feel like that saved people's sanity during the pandemic. I feel like the Switch was very much a prominent console during the pandemic that helped keep people tethered to reality. And then you had Metroid Dread. So nothing but great shit that got us through the pandemic.
Absolutely. I think, and this is where what I was alluding to before comes into play, and you touched on it. This was where Nintendo looked at their two streams and went, why are we doing two things at once? Why don't we combine them? Everybody wins. And it is. Everybody wins. And I will freely admit, hand on my heart and the other hand raised to the heavens, when they first announced the Switch, I pointed and laughed. I looked at that and said, they're sinking their own ship. After the Wii U, they are intentionally running their ship aground. This thing is going to die a death.
I think we all were kind of skeptical. Yeah.
And boy, was I wrong. Oh, man. I've got so much egg on my face. The amount of egg could make me a millionaire. And I'm happy to be wrong about this one. I ended up picking up a Switch. A few years into it, I ended up going, okay, fine. Let's see it. It had been since I'd had the Wii, I skipped the Wii U, and I picked up the Switch, and it's an amazing console. Is it the most graphical powerhouse console on the market? It wasn't even at the time. Even when they announced it and released it, it didn't have the most balls of any of the consoles, but it doesn't need to be. And that's something that I think, especially for the past few generations, that Nintendo has mastered, is we don't need to have the biggest dog in the yard. We just need to have the most interesting one. The Switch finally embraces, I think, the two markets really the three markets that they were trying to go for with the Wii and the GameCube. You get the Nintendo purists, so you get those singular Nintendo experiences with Mario and Zelda and Metroid and Kirby and Pokemon. Shit. We haven't even touched on Pokemon all episode, but this is where Pokemon finally became a console game. You've got hardcore gaming experiences on the system. True, intelligent, mature level games on the Switch, both from Nintendo and from indies. And you've got party games. They did a new version of Wii Sports, updated with better motion controls. Mario Party on here that you can now play online. Their online system still isn't the best, but they have a decent online system. I've got friends that I play Mario Party with every now and then, and they live in California. It's absolutely fun. So they're embracing all these sides, casuals and party and hardcore, and you could take the damn thing on the road with you. I take it with me to doctor's appointments or to my son's karate lesson. And I could just sit there 45 minutes, play a game. Couldn't do that before. I mean, you could, but it was a downscaled version of what there was before. Now you're getting the console experience on the go, truly. It's not this year's handheld is last year's console. It's handheld and console are together as one. It worked because I believe as of a couple months ago, the Switch passed the PlayStation 2 and is now the best-selling console of all time. So,
oh wow,
yeah, they did something right.
Clearly, and the pandemic helped.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I had so many friends who I mean, didn't Animal Crossing come out the month that the pandemic started?
I don't know if it came out the month of, but it came out at least like within a really tight margin of time.
Yeah.
And I feel like, we all relied on Tom to get us through,
That damned money-grubbing Tom.
Tom's so cute.
He is cute. He's just holding a mortgage over your head is all.
So like classic American capitalism. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The most charming people are also the most sociopathic and have all the money.
Exactly. The metaphors for our
Who knew
government.
Who knew that Animal Crossing would be the source of those metaphors?
Exactly.
All right. Do you have anything else you'd like to say about Nintendo?
That's it. I'm excited to see what comes next. No hate to Nintendo.
As much as the Nintendo Switch 2 reveal teaser was just like, okay, yeah, that looks like a Switch, but switchier. I'm excited for it. I know at least one game on there that is a system seller for me, and that's Metroid Prime 4. I've been waiting for that damn game for so long.
Yeah.
But
if anybody wants to help us pay for our Switch 2s that we can use for gaming content, feel free to donate to the podcast.
Right? You'll be helping this show out.
No, but actually,
sad thing is,
tell Judd to play online, right? I've been telling Judd, everybody, just so everybody knows that we should play online live and schedule it with you guys, so that way you could see us in real time.
We'll have to work out a schedule. I mean, we've got a taping schedule, so we might as well start a streaming schedule.
Yeah, then we could crowdfund for a Switch 2, and then we could use our Switch 2, See what I'm saying?
All right, we will discuss that. But now, no, I'm serious. Well, it has been a thought in my head for the past few weeks of we should put down a streaming schedule so that way people can.
Right. We're a gaming podcast.
Right.
People probably think we just like chat GPT this shit and we don't actually have gaming experience because they don't see us game. I don't know.
Yeah. All right. So we will put that on the docket for discussion. We will get something maybe by the next episode. Who knows? But as far as this episode is concerned, we are putting a bow on it. So this is the part where we always say like, share, and subscribe and review us if you could. Just takes a couple minutes to do those things. It would be so helpful if you did. If you'd like to follow the show, it is First Gen Gamers Pod on Blue Sky, on Instagram. You can follow me at Streets of Jed on Blue Sky and on Letterboxd if you like to read movie reviews and see my particularly long-winded discussions about movies that probably don't deserve it. Your turn.
I'm on Instagram at fthat_pod, TikTok fthatpod. I do streams every Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern. If you want to find me there, again, fthatpod. They're called Spooky Saturdays, where I talk about random spooky shit, haunted locations, a bunch of assortments of spooky things. I also just do regular gaming chats, even though it's a true crime podcast. So if you want to listen to me spew my bullshit outside of this podcast, you can find me there.
All right. Until next time, everybody.
Bye.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.